ports and people, harbors as engines of urban inclusion. Now, when we think about ports, we think about the goods, we think about them as gateways for cranes and freight and cargo, but there is a lot more happening, right? Because a port is also a living ecosystem. The material that is being transferred touches so many lives in terms of employment, in terms of community, in terms of supply chains, in terms of the money that is moved around. And it is very important to understand what all goes into making a successful port function. The lens that we will take across this entire session today will be that of inclusion, will be that of society, will be that of people, but at the same time balancing profitability, balancing growth, and balancing governance across the world. We'll kickstart the entire session with some opening remarks by Christian von Daniels, who's going to walk us through what it is that the logistics of a shirt looks like. Now, Christian's company is into manufacturing luxury shirts, and it would be an eye-opening case study to understand what a shirt maker with a worldwide supply chain is going to tell us about the logistics.
Yes.
Christian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you to you all. And I can only give a quick view on the daily challenges and headache of a shirt maker who is forced to get products sourced from all over the world and produce them in our own factories, which are in Vietnam, Germany, and Tunisia. But it doesn't start with the shirt, and the view at this industry is far different from the romantic idea you might have from the past, a small tailor's workshop, and everything is done in this small workshop. The reality is different. We are forced to organize a worldwide supply chain, and it all starts with the raw materials. Raw materials we source from India, very important, but even Caribbean island, we had the Seychelles here recently, but we have Caribbean island, it's the sea island cotton, if you know that. South America, so the raw materials come from all over the world, and we need shipping, we need air freight, we need railway, we need all kinds of transportation. And then it comes to the spinning of the yarns, and then we have the weaving. The weaving takes part, in our case, in Switzerland, some in Italy, a few in China, and now also in India. And after the weaving, we have the next step, which is covered by us, which are the factories. The factories are in, as I said, in Hanoi and in Tunisia and in Germany. So we need a lot of sea freight, air freight, rail freight, trucks. It's a real headache every day. And until the shirt is ready as a garment, it has passed some 20 to 30,000 kilometers with the different components. And what I forgot, the buttons. The buttons in our case are made of mother of pearl. It's a kind of snake, and it lives in the southern sea near Saigon. And we have to dive for those snakes to get our buttons done. And they also pass another 10,000 kilometers to the factories until we can sew them on our beautiful shirts. And then finally, even the ready-made garment has to take a more or less long trip to the shops where we sell. We recently opened Galerie Lafayette in this beautiful city of Mumbai. We all invite you to have a look at that. And we had logistic problems to get the garments into these shops. So finally, when we come to your wardrobe, we are at the end, and it took us a very long way. And logistic is all about it, and we hope we can improve every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christian. A quick question for the audience. When we hit order, when we hit pay on anything that we order on the internet, do we really give it a thought where our product came from? Yes or no? Yes? No? How many of you give it a thought? Where's the product coming from? How many trains and flights and ships has it crossed? Very few, right? That's why you all are here. but you know, the next time, just take a moment, give it a thought. Christians opened our eyes in terms of where all the material comes from, where all the logistics goes into. And I think that is a very important conversation for sustainable supply chains across the world. With that, I'm very, very pleased to introduce my very expert panelists here who are going to walk us through how we can make ports, harbors, and engines of urban inclusion. So I'd like to introduce them all to you. We first have Akanksha Sharma, Vice President Sustainability, DP World India. We then have Amlan Bora, who's the Chief Representative of South Asia from the Port of Rotterdam, Netherlands. And then we've got Ishita Sharma, who's the Research Manager from Port of Esbjerg, Denmark. And then we've got Malvande Netlishana, did I get it close? Who is the Stakeholder Partnership Coordinator from the South African International Maritime Institute. And then we've got Thomas Lukaszuk, who's the researcher from University of Warsaw and the former ambassador of Poland to India. Thank you all very much for being here on this panel. I'm going to jump straight into the conversation, and this is a question for all of you to answer. Ports as people-first ecosystems, that is what we're going to touch upon first. Ports have historically been engines of commerce. How are we in today's world looking at redesigning them to become engines of inclusion, where we create livelihoods, connect communities, and embody social equity? So I think I'll come to you first, Akanksha, and then we'll make our way through the panel.
Sure, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. Look, I think ports are not just gateways of commerce, but they are also great gateways of opportunities for people, for cities, and for countries at large. So when it comes to people and ports, I think what's really important is to change perspective and not view inclusion as an add-on, but the sole driver of operational efficiency and excellence. So I think there are several aspects to it, and because it's a very vast narrative when we talk about communities around the ports and how are we making ports safer and more resilient in terms of workforce operations. The first one I would talk about is enabling the right skill set for the people who are working at the port and creating future-ready workforce. I think it's very important that we create talent which is not just future-ready, but is also very resilient and safe when it comes to port operations, because at the port we work and operate on very large machines, cranes, which are at times quite risky. So I think automation and digitization plays a very big role when it comes to making ports a safe place to work. The second aspect is inclusion around the communities, and I think that's a very big enabler of making ports, again, very inclusive, because not just from the lens of procurement and having the KPIs around how many women-owned SMEs are, because ports are very big procurement engines, and they are living ecosystems in themselves, as you said. But I think more from the enablement perspective, that how are we enabling the local communities around ports, especially the affected communities. And when I say affected communities, it's not just limited to the fishermen or the local villages around the port operations, but also across the supply chain and the value chain. And truckers became a very big, I think, stakeholders in the value chain of this entire port operation. So just to give you an instance of what DP World is doing on the truckers initiative, so we have partnered with large truckers association creating wellness centers for truckers because of their long haul distance and travel time. They are often, they go to accidents, and road accidents we often, I think underestimate, but they are one of the biggest killers in the world. So, making roads a safe place to work, making ports a safe place to work is the second aspect. And the third aspect is environmental stewardship. That how do we really look at integrating port operations with clean energy? uh, our ports in Navasheva and Cochin are operating on clean power, which is not just access to clean energy, but is also fueling, more cleaner operations in the times to come, which is giving us a headway to also operationalize clean energy and green efficiency across all our operational entities. So these are some of the aspects I really wanted to highlight when it comes to port and people.
Thank you so much, Akanksha. And we'll come to the clean energy part in the next phase of the discussion as well. Ishita, and I want to bring the question to you as well as, discuss what exactly are the challenges faced by the port communities. So we'll hear from Ishita, and then we'll hear from Amlan, you, who both of you are representing ports, and what is it that people think about a port when they live around it, work at it? What are those challenges that we need to focus on when we talk about inclusion?
Thank you very much, Urvashi, for the question, and thank you everybody for having me here today. Talking about communities and people, you have touched on a very sensitive subject and also very closely related to me. It's one of my research areas as well. I call them harbor-centric people or people-centric harbors. So we have, when we go back in literature, within this research, we have a concept of port cities, the cities that have developed because of the ports. And if I talk particularly about the European ports, the cities have developed because of the ports. And the port of Esbjerg, where I work presently, you just walk, I think, 100 meters and you are into the city center or the downtown. So I think communities are very, very closely associated with the ports in this manner. And when we are talking about people or the community, it is very important to think from their perspective while we are developing the infrastructure, because we are developing the port of the future. We are not thinking, we should not be rather thinking ports as just gateway of goods or trade zones where goods are happening. No, not at all. I think it's developing a lot of jobs in the future. A lot of people are dependent for their livelihood on the port. We can link several businesses that are there because of the port, several technology providers that are there because they could deploy their technology into the maritime operations. Then we have to think about the green transition and sustainability that is coming forward. So we need to educate the youth towards the green skills, to retain the youth to stay in the area that they have grown up with, so they don't have to. Of course, they should move. I'm not saying that they should not, but we are building it for the people, and people are themselves associated with the port. We don't have to really do something or highlight it that people are not a part of port or port are not part of communities. No, it's not like that. That's my opinion and my view.
Thank you, Ishita. Over to you, Amlan.
Uh, Normally, when I am invited to speak as a panelist or a speaker, the first thing I do is write a mail to my communications head saying, oh, this is the topic for me. Can you send me some talking points? I was very late in responding to your mail. Apologies for that, but that turned out to be blessings. I wrote to my communications manager, and I didn't receive an answer because I was too late. And that led to me thinking myself, what am I going to talk about? What is the topic about? Because it's not really like a direct topic which I'm asked, talk about your sustainability agenda, talk about your energy transition goals, or what exactly are you doing in the Port of Rotterdam? So I started thinking, using this why model. And I quite liked it because I found like reinventing myself. And I think the topic is so apt, not just the ports, every business should start thinking in a model like this. And then I talked to myself, spoke to myself, I should start somewhere. The challenge today is I have so many ideas now, but I have to be limited, so stop me whenever you need to. I would start from the phrase ethics of profit. Peter Drucker talks about it, ethics of profit. What and how can organizations, profit-making organizations, earn profit and yet do that in an ethical manner? I'll keep it top level again, and stop me again. And then I started thinking about what, as my organization, Port of Rotterdam, I'm proud that when I started thinking about my organization, there are many examples which will fit into the topic of inclusivity, which will fit into the topic of sustainability. But then I'm trying to generalize, what is it that will actually make us sustain over the years? Two keywords, I think, are very, very important in my view. And these are my views, so I would like you to be engaged as well and think from a wide perspective. Two keywords are very relevant from my perspective in terms of my organization. First is employability, and second is livability. To sustain and survive and to be competitive and to be adored, how can we be focusing on these two things? Why is that? Because see, there are two things here. One is establishing a brand, and one is establishing reputation, creating reputation. Brand is of something you can invest, you can create. But reputation is not something which you can create from inside out. Reputation is outside in. My actions will define what kind of reputation I earn. I can define a brand. I can wear something like this. I can dress up funnily or nicely or whatever, and I can create a brand. Amlan is that person, but that cannot drive my reputation, right? So when you talk about reputation, and when you talk about disconnect these two words, employability and livability, there are many examples. I'll just cherry pick one or two, and I can expand on it if the time permits. First of all, to make it employable, I'll give an example. Back in 2010, I had a good friend who was studying, or who just passed out of University of Delft, a very bright student, and I was already working for Philips in those days in Amsterdam, and she came to us and said, quite apologizing, that listen, I am so sorry, I have to share that I found a good job, it's very well paying, but I'm so sorry to share with you, I got a job with Shell. I said, what? You should be happy you got a job in Shell, and you should be proud about it, you're gonna get a fat salary. So yeah, but oil and gas, that's why I'm a bit apologetic about it. But you know what, I'm so happy that Shell is already starting to think about renewable fuel. So the thinking that the world, to survive, need to do something different, need to do something sustainable, this particular example from 2009 and 10 triggered that. But that is even more intense today. Port is still a very labor-intensive industry. You can automate the cranes, you can automate this, you can automate that, but still the amount of labor that is required in a port is still huge compared to many other industries, and it will stay like that. And it's not about 50 years ago, just like when there are so many limitations on the amount of jobs you can do. Today, there are so many sexier options for somebody of the younger generation here. So how to keep the ports and this sector attractive? And how do you keep it attractive? By doing things which are demanded by people, just like my friend Lynn asked in 2009 and 10 already, talking about sustainability, talking about ethics of profit. Those are important. Second thing is livability, of course, like you say yourself, it can be an ecosystem of huge pollution and everything bad. Now, how do you make it? How do you reduce noise? How do you make sure that light intensity is not hampering, similar to the port in Asberg? Rotterdam started within the city limits. Our port is a downtown. So how do you make sure that it's still livable? So there are a lot of things we do. One good example is the Portos project. We're investing a couple of $1 billion in creating a project to capture carbon and to store it beneath the North Sea, in the North Sea, beneath the surface of the North Sea. It's going to be sunk cost at, in 5-6 years from now, that capacity is going to be filled and we do nothing about it. I don't think anything can come out of it. We're investing another couple of billions with private participation to capture the carbon. But why are we doing that? To make the port area more livable. We have created Maasvlakte 2, Netherlands, Holland, as you know, is below the sea level. So the name comes itself from that. Because we're below the sea level, we have to do a lot of land reclamation. Maasvlakte 2, which is the extension of the port more to the North Sea, there we have 765 hectares of land, which we have just kept preserved and reserved for ecological parks. We have created beaches there. We have created pavilions where the common people can come and watch and see and feel kind of connected. We're bringing young students from universities and schools every week once to visit our port, to manage the harbor master function, to talk, be the CEO, be the CFO, feel what the role is like to make it attractive. So those kind of things we do, but I am also mindful of the time. For now, I'll stop here, but we can come back to it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would just quickly add something. Thank you for mentioning it. Port of Esbjerg is highly inspired from Port of Rotterdam, and Port of Rotterdam and I think a couple of other ports also, they have their own maritime innovation hubs, if I'm correct. And that's what we have also established in Esbjerg at the moment, where we are engaging with the school students, you know, starting from grade 4 and all the way, and also with the local community, where we invite them and have them sit them around the table so they can talk about how the port of the future that belongs to them, their port, should look like. And then we take those ideas seriously. We go out and talk to government stakeholders, seek investments, financing, grants, and I think we have several projects that are live now that came out of those ideas. So this is for the people, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishita. Now, we've heard the port's perspective, and I would now like to move on to both Malvande as well as Thomas to tell us about the community perspective, tell us about the academic perspective, and tell us about the policy perspective, and what is it that we are doing to make ports more inclusive in your countries.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you. So I work for the South African International Maritime Institute. We are responsible or mandated by government to facilitate the skills development and capacity building, as well as maritime research. I think to your topic, to say what is it that we are doing at our country level to make sure that the ports are inclusive and that they are, people-centered. I think the most thing that the government of South Africa has done is to invest in the human capital. And the investment is not only on the basis of availing the funds, but is an appreciation of the fact that there is a need for an inclusivity insofar as participation is concerned within the value chain of the ports and also activities leading to the trade. In that regard, we've got a due consideration of the fact that for any economy to grow, for any country to progress, you need to invest on the skills development. And that investment has to start from the lower level, from an education perspective, because young people becomes the future of any country. And therefore the investment in them makes the question of sustainability much more relevant, because if you don't invest in them, you are going to lose the old people in the system, and then what then happens? The entire system collapses. But the second point is the question of, the gender part of it. The maritime sector, as you know, statistics are out there from a female perspective. And for instance, if you were to look from a seafaring side of it and port operations, if you like, from a port operations point of view, you would have many males compared to the females. And also the question of labor-intensive side of things, you'd find more males in that part. But does it mean that females can't do that work? The answer is no, they can. And that's why from the level of government, there is an investment on a targeted approach to have, programs targeted to the females to actually participate in the port economies, in the maritime industry at large, to the extent that even in our institution, we've got a bursary scheme which targets only females from undergrad up to the postdoctoral level. This is to ensure that we're bridging the gap, having many more females into the sector. But I think the other part, which I think it's an important part from a sustainability point of view of the ports, is the question of collaborations and partnerships. And you know, with countries such as South Africa with that rich history, which I don't want to talk about it, the question of ensuring that there's fostering of dialogue and partnership with both civil society, academia, government, and so on becomes a critical, component in making sure that the ports are not by themselves as conduit of trade, but they are also an ecosystem wherein different people are able to live within that space. And the recognition of the fact that the ports themselves are one, skills development and centers, two, that they are employment creation centers, but three, that they are small business development centers themselves. So I think all of those things are taken care of in our context. And I think let me leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Malvande. Over to you, Thomas.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. Congrats to organizers. I participate in for the second time in Sagarmantan, and it really develops. It's becoming really one of the best and global initiatives and events related to maritime issues. For us, I mean, in Poland, as nowadays chair of the Baltic States Council, I would say this way: for the ports. It's the standardization of several initiatives and also approaches towards the communities. And as my predecessors also emphasized, that the port should not be a place somewhere apart from the city. It should be included into the city. And first of all, this is the matter of the pollution. I mean, the air pollution and water pollution. And nowadays we have museums, cafes, and the entertainment centers just next to the piers, next to the, certainly with the security zones. Appropriately settled, but this also very important. And for us, this inclusivity and transparency is very important. We have one of the biggest ports in Europe, in Gdansk, and this became a part also the kind of the conference center like this one also was established just next to the port, when also the educational part is being introduced and implemented. And I would also like to draw your attention to something what was mentioned about the rise of the sea level. The sea level, and when you take a look at the maps 2050, I mean in 25 years, so we really have to think not only about protecting ports, but also protecting the coastline population living next to the ports, and building the dams and building the infrastructure, not to let people feeling that this only profit making institution, but it's also the community, for the benefit of community, and also for the benefit of the society at the local level, at the national level, and also the regional level. I'm speaking about the Baltic Sea or any other any other sea or ocean. This is extremely important. We have to remember that the more than a half of the world population, I'm speaking about the percentage, lives just in the neighborhood of ports or next to the ports, and this social security and environmental security, it should be really at the top of the agenda in the next 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Thomas. It actually sets the scene for the next phase of our discussion. But before we go there, I've got a quick question for the audience. Can you all think about the children in your life? Nieces, nephews, kids that you've got. Can you check with them, or if you're aware, do you know, are we teaching ocean sustainability? Are we teaching ocean matters in our schools today? Yes? How many of you think yes? Yes? Okay. How many of you think we're not doing enough in terms of teaching the future about what's happening in the ocean? So, very large no, right? So as homework for all of us, we can go and start teaching the younger ones around us what's happening in the ocean. I know I do that. Yes, Malvandi, you have a point to make here.
Yes, no, thanks. Yeah, I've got a point to make. In as much as that we are not doing enough, I'm not going to claim that we're doing enough to teach the young ones from basic education level. But in South Africa, you know what we've done? We have introduced the maritime subjects from a basic education level, not only to discuss issues or to get to know about maritime only when you get to university, but from the lower grades, to the extent that we've got 3 subjects that we have. One is a nautical sciences, which we have it, and second is a maritime economics, and the third one is a marine science. All of those subjects, we've introduced them at a basic education level, that is before grade 12 or matric. This is to create an awareness that the ocean that you see, it is also an opportunity for you, one, to learn about it, but also to know that there are opportunities for skills development, for employment, for careers, and so on. So that's the kind of work that we're doing, to a point that we want to scale it down up to we want to revive what used to be an environmental education in the lower grades, and take it further up to the grade 2. So that all of these young people, the kids, when they grow up, they get to know what the ocean has to offer, what the environment looks like, and what are the benefits that we get from the ocean, as it were, in terms of sustaining the livelihoods. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's really impressive. Ishita, can we come back to this? We are going to talk about sustainability efforts now. So I'm being a little conscious of time and slightly strict with my panelists. But the next phase of the conversation is going to be tailored to each of your work, right? So you have the opportunity to share a lot more. But some of the themes that we will talk about is balancing that growth, profitability, governance, along with a planet-first approach, right? That is what we will focus on broadly as a theme. So, Akanksha, I'll start with you. DP World is a global organization. It, works across different continents with diverse communities, right? So, how does a global logistics player translate their sustainability commitments into tangible local benefits? How are you balancing this act?
So thank you, Urvashi, for asking this question, because it gives me an opportunity to really bring out some success models and stories from what we do. One of them is the ocean strategy that we just talked about, and you were speaking about how conscious the next generation is about ocean sustainability. So I'm very proud to share that we are one of the few organizations to have ocean sustainable approach that is from source to sea, and the entire approach is so closely embedded into our business strategy, into every single decision making that we do while it comes to commissioning a new port to looking at the maritime sector, I think it really helps us in navigating through the space in a very, very directional perspective. So that's one. Second is in terms of the success stories that I wanted to really share with you all. Ports as an operating entities have this inherent responsibility to enable trade and empower communities, you know. So I think I'll give you an example. We as port operators have really, you know, empowered some local MSMEs, small and medium enterprises, in going, providing them market access, trade access, and access to finance. So I think these are some of the essential skill sets and enablers required for them to go global. Very recently, we have signed an MOU with the Niti Aayog, which is the central government think tank of India, to empower women-owned MSMEs and small and medium enterprises to go global. Another example is our India-Dubai virtual trade corridor, which has really made trade and access to the global markets paperless and digital. And it is, you know, a classic example of how digitization and automation can really accentuate trade to the global market. We have also come up with Bharat Mart, which will be operational in the next year, where, you know, the Indian small and medium enterprises will get an access to global markets, to the Europe, Africa, and the Gulf geographies via the operational space that we are creating. That includes offices, warehouses, and shops. So I think all of these are small enablers that really accelerates trade and take local to global approach for the medium and small enterprises, because as I said, trade must flow, and port have this inherent responsibility of really accelerating trade and empowering the local communities. The third aspect is how do we look at inclusion in totality. So, you know, I think like I mentioned earlier, that communities are very important stakeholders for us, and we have this I had the you were talking about ethics and profitability. So I had the good fortune of learning it from Michael Porter at the Harvard leadership course, where he talked about creating shared values, and this is what DP World's Our World, Our Future strategy is all about, that we are not just limited to our own versions of sustainability, but how can we make it more consultative and collaborative, not just internally across the functions and the business units, but also externally across the stakeholders. And community is one such very important pillar and stakeholder for us. So we have done holistic development programs for the communities around our ports, which is not just limited to access to mobile medical facilities, to access to education, but more importantly for the affected communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Akanksha. Amlan, I'd like to come to you now, and if we could please keep it brief, because I do want to get some questions from the audience. Rotterdam has transformed itself over the last few years, keeping sustainability as a priority, from a traditional port to a circular economy hub. What is it that enabled this transition? Was it policy? Was it technology? Was it collaboration? Was it all of it? And how is it that other ports can learn from this beautiful case study that Rotterdam has created?
First of all, I think the driver is a fact, which is a hard reality, and appreciating that hard reality. If we look at the earth, including it all the human beings, trees, animals, and let's say that we need one bucket of water to be able to conserve our resources for many generations to come, then at this moment, we are spending 1.6 buckets of water every year, right? Which means something is not going right, and we need to do something differently. And that is probably at the core of how organizations like Port of Rotterdam think. And we talk about circularity, there are again two drivers to that. First of all, waste reduction, and all of us have been talking about it in a different way. Waste reduction is fundamental to be able to preserve that one bucket of water and not to exceed that capacity utilization. Waste reduction can be done through multiple ways, and like Akanksha has as well said, digitalization is one way of reducing waste. Because if you digitalize, you basically make your operations more efficient. You're just on time in terms of data sharing. You reduce, as an example, you reduce the waiting time of a ship or a vessel once it calls the port. You do the intermodal connectivity much more efficient. The container moves faster. People are deployed when they're required to be deployed. So complete resource deployment. So digitization drives that. Other than waste reduction, the second reality is geopolitics. If we all talk about the Paris Climate Agreement as a yardstick for talking about sustainability. But if we have to deliver, the world has to deliver the goals set by the Paris Agreement, do we know that the world will need 41 times, taking 2020 as a reference here, the world will need 41 times of what we are using lithium today in 2020, 41 times more. 25 times more graphite, 21 times more cobalt, 19 times more nickel, and 7 times more rare earth metal. But where is it going to come from? The art has got a limited capacity. We're not inventing these things. We're not creating these things. And if you then look at today, the reality, if we look at who controls the access or the supply chain for rare earth metals and many of these products, it is one country, fortunately or unfortunately. China, through their refining, but also as well as their exploration. So even if we can talk about big things, we can talk about climate change, we can talk about sustainability, you can talk about electronics, India is talking about semiconductors, but all of these things will need access to all of these metals. So creating an alternative supply chain is very fundamental for the world to be able to deliver. And Port of Rotterdam has understood that. And as you know, Port of Rotterdam has 3 phases to it. We are a gateway port, gateway to Europe. We are also a transshipment hub because of our great intermodal connectivity, but we are also an industrial cluster. And we are very choosy in terms of making decisions on who get a place to have their factories and industrial in our port premises. Today, what we are focusing on is on processing of this kind of products so that we can increase the recyclability of products, but also we can become a cost-effective, neutral, geopolitically neutral hub for converting and for supplying the world with the metals and the elements which the world would need as an alternative to deliver our sustainability goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Amlan. Ishita, coming to you. And Port of Esberg is one of the leaders for Europe's global energy transition. What has your journey been? What are the lessons we can learn from where you are at?
I think it's an open book. Port of Esberg used to be an oil and gas port. Prior to that, it was one of the biggest fishing harbors. And there was a famous saying that Esbjerg smells of money, because of the fishing. So we have transformed from oil and gas to offshore wind. Today, 60% of the revenue is coming from offshore wind. But as we go into the future, we know that offshore wind at one point will mature and it will be saturated. And at the same time, with all the climate agendas and all that going, we have understood that ports have to play a very, very primary role in serving as green energy hubs. And Port of Esbjerg has identified it 5 years ago. And we were right on that thanks to the management that is open to new ideas, open to new observations, and open to new innovation. We created our Getting to Zero plan, where we have claimed that we will be carbon neutral by 2027 and carbon negative by 2030. The first initiative was taken in January 2021, and I myself am very proud of directing and developing this Getting to Zero strategy. We are into 2025 today, 4 years in the line, and I think all the projects that we have defined, we are going forward with that. We are developing a CCS hub, similar to what Rotterdam is doing. We are talking about all the green fuels production, producing our own fuels and then using it for the operations. We have identified the maximum emissions. We are electrifying our terminals as well, looking into several different initiatives. So a port like this can serve as a case to the other ports, that it is doable. All you need is the will to do it and collaboration, a team or stakeholders that can carry it forward as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ishita. And that's my opening to your question, Malvande. you've given us some great examples of the initiatives that are already taking place in South Africa, how the government is involved, how literacy, ocean literacy is being promoted. What is it that it will take it to the next level? What are you seeking? What are the partnerships? What are the next steps? How does South Africa's initiatives of making ports an inclusive hub look 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line?
Okay, so what we are trying to do is understanding, first is doing an analysis of us as a country, understanding our strong points, understanding our weaknesses, and then on the basis of that, we look at the partnerships to say, for us to close this particular gap, we need to work with so and so. For us to close that gap, we need to work with so and so. For us to enhance or strengthen on what we already capitalize on, we need to work with so and so. So it's an ability to be able to navigate the world, to choose the right partners for the people to work with. Just one last thing, I'm conscious of the time. You see, in South Africa, part of what we do in our institution is the training of seafarers. So, part of the port operations, you need to have those people to navigate the tags and so on. But also those that get the unlimited tickets, the seafarers. But the limitation that we have is the availability of the beds, which is the shipping. We don't have a ship register. We've got only 4 ships on our register. So we rely on foreign countries, to get the beds. So part of what we do is to look around, travel all around the world and look at the partnerships with those different shipping companies to give us, beds availability. But the center to it is understanding our realities and from understanding our realities and look around who can plug us to close those gaps. And I think that's what is going to keep us going forward in the future. Thank you so much.
Thomas, coming to you, I would love to hear your thoughts based on your diplomatic and academic background in terms of how are ports evolving to becoming critical hubs for activities. What is it that Poland is doing and what is it that Europe is doing that we can learn from and probably duplicate around different parts of the world?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, first of all, this what we also discussed before the panel. I mean, European Ocean Pact just signed in June this year, and also the Blue Pulse Initiative program implemented or to be implemented, fully implemented in Europe. It's a matter of the ports as hubs of innovation, because the innovative blue economy businesses model, there's something which would serve not only for ports or the coastal areas, but in all the whole Europe. And I think this innovation also includes the inclusivity. I mean, not to let us to robotize all the processes in the ports, all the processes in the industry itself, but make it sustainability also the human-oriented. I mean, if we have some sectors like ports, very much say labored and involving both the laborers, I mean employers of the ports and the community, let us also do it also on land, because we cannot let artificial intelligence to lead us to the future. We have to lead the future just using artificial intelligence and robots. It is also one of the important points for us in development of the the ports, and also in development of the maritime transportation, which in the years to come would still serve as the major communication link between not only ports but countries and continents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And I think I'm paraphrasing this very powerful quote, but it is one of my favorites currently. Technology and tools like artificial intelligence aren't the silver bullet we are looking for. They are enablers, they are tools at the end of the day, and the solutions will still be very human, keeping people at the center. With this, I'd like to take 2, maybe 3 questions from the audience. We'll take them together and then I'll divide them for the panelists. I know it's almost lunchtime, so we'll keep it quick.
As a student of international relations and maritime security studies, I'd like to ask which specific models or frameworks of port inclusivity and sustainability do you believe should be studied and researched further by the upcoming generation?
Okay. Sir, behind there, do you had a question? Okay, yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your insights. Being an economics student, and I was just studying about Das Kapital, the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx, I think that the idea of labor laws are somewhat ignored or somewhat not focused when we come in the sport sectors, as you rightly mentioned, that it is more of a labor-intensive sector. The exploitation of the laborers, the wages of the laborers, and maybe the human capital in which we are investing, there is a lot of replacement of the laborers who are already working over here. Then it leads to poverty in those people. It can even lead to intergenerational poverty in those people. So the 2 important words which you gave, employability along with legality. Can labor laws perfectioning or like trying to improve the labor laws of a country, and what Rotterdam has done, what are the insights that you feel that we can do in this stream in order to make it more efficient, more sustainable, so that it can not only prosper the businessmen, the communities, but also the laborers who are working here. Most of them even migrate in such areas to just work over there. So what do you feel according to you, and what have you all done in that field? I just want to know about that.
Thank you. One final question.
Yes. Dr. Thomas, you have worked at the intersection of diplomacy and maritime governance. So I am curious about your perspective on the institutional side of things. So in your view, what kind of governance or regulatory model can best balance port efficiency with legal oversight, especially in the critical elements like medicinal devices and medicinal things, we may say.
Thank you. I think, Thomas, we'll take the question specific to you, and then we'll come to both the ladies here. One distinction that I would want to make with respect to the laws that you've brought up is port labor-intensive laws would be very different from seafarers' laws, would be very different from overall maritime laws. So the nuances of labor laws, even within the maritime space, within the port space, would be very, very different and individually looked at.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because when you work at sea, at the ocean, so you have different perspective. Believe me, it's like the jumping into spaceship is the same kind of risk. You never know if you reach your port or not. I mean, I'm serious. Believe me. So speaking about institutional framework, I made a comparative analysis, and you can read it online with open access. I mean, between the models of institutional framework here in India, in South Asia, Southeast Asia, global South in general, and I would tell you, I mean, you can have really a beautiful institutions, but the efficiency of institutions and the personal impact of people working insight and the leadership, proper leadership, it really matters. I mean, the management, the proper management, and when I take a look, I mean, the African Union, they have a beautiful institutional framework in dealing with ports, blue economy, and everything. But if you take a look at the efficiency, so it's very, very low. So it's when the experts from the United Nations they take a deeper look, also me as well. So it was a matter of management on daily basis and from all the levels. I mean, starting from the particular ports up to the nation and region. This is the most important. You have also in India excellent institutions, believe me. All the plans, everything. But if you come to the real life, the real efficiency, it turns out that for example, that the program it's designed in 1986. Nowadays, it should be changed. It should be adjusted to the reality. You cannot, as I said in the beginning, keep ports apart and let's say establish the special zones to keep ports or any kind of facility 500 meters away from the seashore. It's totally unrealistic. Thank you.
Amlan, would you like to take the question about labor laws?
I mean, I am answering this question because as part of the same society, the global society, if somebody asks a question, it is our collective responsibility to dwell on the question. In no way the opinion that I'm expressing is Port of Rotterdam's opinion or the Dutch government's opinion. It is my personal understanding of your question, right? And I'm also saying that because you look younger than me, and if you said we're the same age, then let me know the medicines you're taking, please. So first of all, the way I look at it is we cannot look at salaries and wages in isolation, right? 100 euro in India would be able to buy you more stuff than 100 euro in the Netherlands. That's the PPP, purchasing power parity. So what is more important is how different or how big is the bandwidth between the highest earner and the lowest earner. And in that perspective, again, I'm not defending, I'm just sharing. If you look at Netherlands and some of the other European partners, the Scandinavian countries, the parity, Poland, I'm sure would be belonging to the same ideology. The parity between the highest earner and the lowest earner in the society is not as huge as it can be in many countries. Having said that, don't you have any labor problems? We absolutely do. And talking about ports, the Port of Rotterdam is just going through a cycle of labor strikes, right? We are going through that. And it's not just the Port of Rotterdam. At least from a reputation perspective, it's all the European ports who are doing this, which means the problem is even more genuine. But then one of the panelists today used a word about shared value. It's again, these are such interconnected things. You cannot take a decision that I increase the labor wages and then everything is hunky-dory from that point onwards. It is not, unfortunately. You need to also think about how much of your earnings you devote to R&D, how much you will do for doing social projects, how much you do as preparing for the future, how much you do to take care of those unknowns which are still unknowns. So those are a lot of things which needs to be taken into perspective. And the only surviving mantra in that is what I think you said, is to have a shared value proposition. But how can we have shared value proposition? Very simple again, it's just a mindset change. We need to have less conflicts and more partnerships. The question, very challenging question. As CEO would like to find 100 ways to avoid this question, but we should not avoid questions. We should have to have real partnerships, we should have dialogues. And that's the essence of what we are doing here today. Thanks for asking, though.
I think we'll take final remarks from Malvande, and we'll also discuss what ports to keep a lookout for, but I'm sure the panelists will be happy to speak to you about what ports you should research.
Yes. No, thanks so much. Just on the question of the labor laws, exploitation of workers. You know, I think the first part that we need to talk about is understanding that certain institutions are profit before people. So in certain institutions, it's people before profit. So if you are in the private sector space, it's profit before people. So the possibility of the exploitation of workers is high. But I think what needs to happen, in my view, and I think based on our country perspective, is a question of having workers unionized. Once you have the workers unionized, they are able to speak and influence the labor laws. Of course, I'm not talking about unionization in the context of the workers themselves only fighting for their rights at the expense of the organization, because the same organization is what feeds them. And therefore, they need to be rational in their thinking in terms of saying, this is how the labor laws should work, wages should be like that. So in South Africa, we have what is called minimum wage. A minimum wage for every sector of the economy. So be it you're in the private or in the public sector, there is a specific minimum wage that you can't pay people below a particular wage. And in a way, that part addresses some of the questions around the exploitation of the workers. But the question again doesn't mean that we don't have strikes. We do have strikes, but sometimes they don't emanate from the part of not getting paid what was intended to be, but sometimes the question of now having to go and renegotiate with them and say, well, we're not doing well from a profit point of view, and therefore it will be difficult to adjust the salaries, because every year in April in South Africa, there's an adjustment of salaries. So there would have been projections of 3 years, but sometimes those projections might not work due to economic volatility and so on. But your question remains relevant, and it's an important one. So it's always to have those leftist thinking ideologies sometimes when you deal with these issues. But thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you to my very, very insightful panel. I think we've covered a lot of ground in today's discussion. Thank you to the audience for your very prompt engagement. I'm feeling slightly more confident to make this statement after our discussion that the future of maritime growth will probably not be measured in the tons that we move around the world, but it should be measured in the lives that we've been able to improve. Thank you. Thank you so much.